Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise to speak today in strong opposition to Bill C-12, the so-called Border Security and Immigration Act. So let's be clear, this bill is not a new approach. It is a repackaging, a political sleight of hand. Bill C-12 is simply Bill C-2 with a fresh coat of paint. It does not fix the fundamental problems of its predecessor. It doubles down on the same anti-migrant, anti-refugee agenda and that civil society, legal experts, and human rights advocates have already rejected in overwhelming numbers. Over 300 civil society organizations, from the Canadian Civil Liberties Association to the United Church of Canada, have called for the full withdrawal of both bills. And they're right, because Bill C-12 maintains the sweeping new powers in Bill C-2 related to refugee asylum seekers, and whereby the minister and cabinet, at the expense of transparency and fairness and human rights, can engage in a host of actions and given a host of authority. So let's talk about some of the most egregious elements of what this bill actually does. Bill C-12 gives Cabinet the authority to suspend or terminate immigration applications, to cancel visas, work permits, or permanent resident documents whenever it deems to be, quote, in the public interest. But
sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. The honourable member may proceed.
But, Madam Speaker, there is no definition of, quote, public interest. None. No guidelines, no guardrails, no requirements for evidence, no judicial oversight. The government can use this clause to shut down entire classes of immigration overnight. Madam Speaker, as reported by CBC, people who apply under the humanitarian compassionate stream, the processing time right now is up to 600 months. That's 50 years. For caregivers, it's 9 years. For the agri-food stream, it's 19 years. For entrepreneurs, 35 years. This is unheard of. And this is all coming out of, by the way, the minister's transition binder. And yes, fear is that the government will just cancel applications en masse. And that's what Bill C-12 would allow the government to do. It is stoking fear. And, you know, if the government wanted to just say, hey, no, Canada wants to shut its door for asylum seekers, then just say it. Instead of actually doing this under the pretense of somehow this is just and fair and respecting procedural fairness. Madam Speaker, this is not good governance. This is not just this government that we need to be concerned about the actions that they might take with this kind of power. It is also giving itself that power to future governments as well. The bill also allows the government to block refugee hearings, to impose retroactive one-year bars on asylum claims, and to strip people of their status en masse. These are powers that echo some of the most extreme anti-migrant policies we have seen south of the border. The Prime Minister likes to claim that this is, quote, modernizing or, quote, efficiency. Is not. Is peddling to the racist, discriminatory narrative with Trump leading the charge. This bill would directly harm refugees and vulnerable migrants, people fleeing war, persecution, and violence, and frankly, is un-Canadian. Let's remember, Canada once prided itself on being a refuge for those in need. But Bill C-12 sends the opposite message. It says, quote, if you didn't file your paperwork within a year, we don't want to hear your case. Imagine a woman fleeing gender-based violence, arriving in Canada with nothing, struggling with trauma, with no access to legal support, and just trying to survive, and then being told that she is too late to seek safety. As Women's Shelters Canada and Leave have pointed out, arbitrary timelines like these deny survivors the ability to seek protection when they need it most. Why we should not be upholding, we should be upholding the rule of law, not concentrating power in cabinet. Bill C-12 represents a dangerous step backward. It undermines our international obligations, our charter values, our reputation as a country that welcomes those in need. The NDP stands with the hundreds of organizations across the country, civil liberties, advocates, refugee lawyers, women's groups, faith communities who are united in saying, withdraw Bill C-12 and Bill C-2. So I ask, how can the government put forward legislation that will knowingly endanger survivors of violence or someone being persecuted for who they love? Or where Madam Speaker, 64 countries, by the way, criminalizes homosexuality. But that's not all. Under the U.S. administration, Trump's executive orders threatens the rights, health care, and the existence of transgender people. More and more, actually, my office, we're hearing from people who are in fear, who are living in fear in the United States. Bill C-12 is also a blow to civil liberties. It authorizes unprecedented information sharing across departments without proper safeguards. It empowers border agents to access private facilities and detain goods for export. It expands the Coast Guard's role into intelligence collection and surveillance. And even though the government removed some of the most intrusive measures from Bill C-2, like the warrantless access to Canada's private data, the spirit of the bill remains the same: centralization of power and erosion of rights. The International Civil Liberties Monitoring Group has warned that this bill, quote, fast-tracks the most egregious aspects of its predecessor. It doesn't fix the problems, it accelerates them. Let's not kid ourselves, Madam Speaker. Bill C-12 exists because Bill C-2 became too toxic to pass. Rather than listen to the hundreds of organizations demanding its withdrawal, the government chose to split it into two, hoping Canadians wouldn't notice. But we do notice. We notice that these measures come at a time when asylum claims have dropped by 34%, and when the average number of daily refugee claims have plummeted from 165 to 12. So what is the crisis exactly the government is responding to? This isn't about border security, it's about politics. It's about appeasing a Trump-style anti-immigrant, migrant narrative that is creeping into our political discourse. There is a dangerous pattern emerging under this government, an obsession with centralizing authority and sidestepping accountability. It's carrying out the Conservatives' agenda, but by a new Liberal leader dressed in red. Bill C-12 expands Cabinet's ability to rule by order. It gives ministerial unilateral power to cancel applications, suspend rights, and make regulations without parliamentary oversight. And this is not the Canadian way. Our immigration and refugee system should be based on clear laws, fair processes, and independent decision-making, not on who happens to sit in cabinet. Let's recognize who bears the brunt of these policies: women fleeing violence, LGBTQ2+ refugees seeking safety, migrant workers exploited in precarious jobs, Indigenous peoples in border communities who already face racial profiling. Bill C-12 deepens these inequalities instead of addressing them. So, Madam Speaker, let's make sure we do this right. When we talk about immigration, we're talking about people, families, workers, children who come here seeking safety and a better life. We should be strengthening our refugee system and not weakening it. They put women and girls at risk of being deported back into danger. The one-year bar is a copycat of the U.S. refugee determination system. And get this, in the U.S., the one-year timeline starts at the most recent entry into the United States Canada's proposal is actually worse. It starts at the beginning, the first time they visit Canada. So that means if you visited Canada some years ago as a child and you're now being persecuted, you will not be able to apply for an asylum here in Canada. And that is wrong, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Well, Madam Speaker, we see the extremes. We have the leader of the Conservative Party who in essence wants everyone to leave. And then we have the NDP. I don't think they fully understand what the situation or the reality is on the ground level, Madam Speaker. I really and truly believe that. To try to give some sort of a false impression that there's no need for us to modify or make changes to the system of asylum is, I don't understand it. I deal with immigration every day virtually. Every Saturday I'm talking with people that want to be able to come to Canada. And I do not understand where it is the member is getting her numbers from to try to give the false impression that there's nothing wrong with the system. I think we have a Prime Minister and a government that recognize that we have a very serious situation. We need to stabilize the whole asylum area and stabilize immigration in general. It is good for the Canadian economy for us to do that. Bill C-12 does a good part that, Madam Speaker. I don't understand why does the NDP not support this legislation.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Well, Madam Speaker, the numbers actually come from the minister's transitional binder. I would advise the member to read the bill. The bill is egregious with its violation of the rights. Oh, there's plenty wrong with the Liberals at the helm for the last 10 years in Canada's immigration system. I can go on for days about that. But stripping people of their rights, putting women who face gender violence in danger is not the right way to go. Putting LGBTQ2 members' lives in danger is not the way to go. Stripping refugees their right to due process is not the way to go. In fact, I actually tabled a private member's bill calling for an immigration ombudsperson. That's what we should do to ensure that we should do this fairly, properly, and not just give carte blanche power to a government. And by the way, the Liberals dressed in red, they are just acting like the Conservatives.
Questions et commentaires. Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Government House Leader.
Well, you know, I guess if we were to throw insults, you know, she's behaving like a communist, Madam Speaker. You know, like they are so far to the left. Does the member actually understand we have a 7% factor to a 5% factor in terms of temporary permits? Does she believe that Canada should be moving towards that 5%? The Prime Minister and this government does believe we should be moving towards the 5% on temporary permits. Does she support that? And does she support the government trying to address the asylum issue? There is an issue that is there. It's real. Does she believe we should address it? Or should we just sit back, close our eyes, and put our heads in the sand?
Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Let me just put this on the record for all members to hear very clearly. My mother just passed away on October the 4th. She left China, a communist regime that attacked her and her family, and they fled and went to Hong Kong and eventually moved to Canada, and where we established. I am not a communist. Let's be clear about that. I am actually being persecuted right now by the Chinese government under the Foreign Interference Act, where they are actually targeting me as an evergreen target. So let's be clear. I am not communist, but I stand for equality, I stand for justice, I stand for what Canada has always been in my eyes, standing for people and protecting them. That's what our refugee system has been, and bit by bit, this Liberal government under Bill C-2 and now under Bill C-12 is eroding that. I want refugee and asylum claimants to have access to due process under the IRB. Yes, there needs to be reform, but not this way.
Let me first offer my condolences to the Honourable Member. Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Waterloo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I also want to offer my sincere condolences on the passing of the member's mother. I do believe it's important when we are having debates on such important topics that we get to hear kind of what could make legislation better, because we are at second reading. The legislation will go to committee. So I think that was a little bit of a reaction to the comments made by the member, where suggesting wearing a certain color makes you a certain party and whatever the case is. Right now, this is an important bill. We do need to try to get it right. Canadians are asking for it. We had an elections. Canadians sent us in our respective roles in this chamber, and the NDP knows that they have not even received party status, but they do have an important role to play here. I know I have constituents who also recognize the important work. So I'd ask the member, does she see the value in this legislation? Could it be improved at committee? Does she have some feedback that she would like the government to hear so that we can try to get it right and to serve Canadians the way we all have a desire to do? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Vancouver East.
To say this, over 300 civil organizations are against this bill and calling for the government to withdraw it. My question is this: why should a person's claim be ineligible simply because they visited Canada sometime in the past? This is more of an attempt of the government trying to hollow out Canada's refugee determination system at the IRB by preemptively stopping people from even applying or making an application. Perhaps that's the goal of the government. After all, move Canada's system to where almost no one will be heard by the IRB. Canada can do better, and we must do better. And this approach that the government has adopted, the NDP do not support. And we have lots of suggestions of how the government can do it better. Let's engage in proper consultation, scrap this bill, and I will be at the table with the government to work with you to bring better legislation to enhance and support our immigration system.